You just heard Fatherhood from an album called Divine Radiance by Tisziji Muñoz. That's on the Anami Music label. And we are very, very lucky to be joined in the studio today by Mr. Muñoz. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
He's playing tomorrow night
Yes.
in Arlington at the Regent Theater with Bob Moses and John Lockwood.
Yes.
And just for starters, with that show, are these musicians you've played with before?
Oh, yes, quite often. Yeah.
And how would you, or for this gig, is there preparation going on beforehand? Will there be rehearsals? You can get up there
No,
and do
I
it?
don't think so, really. Although there may be a brief discussion as to anything that might require a certain kind of discipline. Otherwise, the discipline would be freedom. And that would be, I think, the condition that for certain players is the easiest to maintain or attain, and then for others it's quite impossible to maintain or attain. Freedom is a very good concept, and musically it's very difficult to understand what freedom means as opposed to form and structure. So the discipline is freedom, which means that the mind has to be watched very, very carefully in terms of allowing memory to dominate and control the process or the event of the music. And so this is something that I have tried to teach some players about in terms of maintaining the discipline, which is freedom in the context of playing music, which is bondage, generally. It's bondage to memory and imitation.
Now, those who know your music know that there's more going on than just the sound itself. You're involved in a number of activities, teaching and writing, and I'm curious what kind of understanding you need between the people you play with and yourself in order to make the music happen.
Well, I think this could be considered, depending upon one's attitude about these kinds of things, a way of accessing original religion or original harmony or original transcendence of one's world. And I think ultimately that's what the artist is given this so-called art form, or art forms in general, for, and that is to try to communicate their divinity rather than their problematic position in the universes of time and space. And so I think that's a good place to start. We start by way of reflecting our suffering and our karma and our disturbances and resistances to life conditions, and then we evolve. If we are progressing, then we evolve to a point where rather than a mirror to society, we become a window to divinity. And I think being a window to divinity is more important and arrives at what I call true or pure art, which is no art at all. It's just heart. So.
Wow. So I think we should play some more music here to orient our listeners.
Okay.
And I want to hear more. We want to hear about specifically how you came to this understanding in your lifetime.
Okay.
But for now, maybe from this record, we should hear something. First of all, these kind of musicians on this record, Pharoah Sanders, Ravi Coltrane, Rashid Ali, Paul Schaefer, Don Pate, Cecil McBee.
Yes.
What do they mean to you?
They're companion spirits who offer me an opportunity to play this music, this very simple and very peaceful music, with a minimum of conversation, a minimum of direction, just it's very simple and direct understanding that's already in place between us. And it's kind of like following the sound current, not just following the form, but following the sound, following something that has to, again, to do with our spiritual nature, the proper feeling, not quite soul as such, in the common understanding of the word soul and a groove. No, it's like going beyond that. It's like the heart of soul itself. And then because of their vast experience and their inclination towards or need for freedom in a manner of speaking, freedom, and having the freedom to express themselves and thus purify themselves so they feel good. The whole idea of freedom is to play so that you feel good, not feeling like you accomplished playing music, but that you are relieved of playing music as well, as relieved of everything and anything that you think about that shows up as a trouble or a problem. So that's why I say this is original religion and self-purifying if it is approached with the right understanding, so that you're not a slave to music and you are more or less the master of the music. And so with these guys, these gentlemen, and they're all gentlemen, they understand that, and so they appreciate and they respond properly, and thus positively to the little bit of direction that I offered them. And in this case, we're talking about an event that happened, 9/11, just before this date, and so that event, that catastrophic event, sort of colored the feelings. It tenderized the heart of all the people on the planet, and so being right there in the same area where this occurred, right after that, made it very easy for this kind of music to be played. And some have criticized the fact that we played the ballad you just heard, but it's called fatherhood. And I think in these moments of tragedy, what you want to feel is really some sense of fatherhood, some sense of origin, some sense of guidance. And so fatherhood, even though it's a ballad or a very peaceful prayer, I think is very appropriate for this date, even though much of it is very turbulent. And serving to, by the intensity of it, to balance the amount of intensity that we have absorbed from all of this warfare. So it's up to us to balance it out, not to merely play music, but to push the tide back. And to push the tide back of this karma, you have to give more than just your musical knowledge. You have to go deeper than that. You have to express yourself more powerfully than that, say, more spiritually than that. So that's...
I want to hear a little bit about this.
Sure.
So let's listen to at least part of Visiting This Planet, Leaving This Planet from Divine Radiance. Tisziji Muñoz, again, is playing tomorrow night in the Regent Theater in Arlington with Bob Moses and John Lockwood at 8 p.m. And here is his music. You're hearing music from Tisziji Muñoz, Divine Radiance. That featured Tisziji Muñoz with Ravi Coltrane, as well as a Pharaoh Saunders and a rhythm section of Rashid Ali, Paul Schaefer, Don Pate, Cecil McBee. And we are very lucky to be graced by Mr. Muñoz today in the studio here.
Thank you.
And he, again, is playing tomorrow night at the Regent Theater in Arlington, 8 p.m., and that's with John Lockwood and Bob Moses. And
those guys shake the trees, by the way. They really shake the trees. They shake the trees.
Yeah, we hear them.
They make it work.
Yeah, we hear them here every Monday night, and we have been for about 30 years. And yeah.
Very good. I'm very happy to have that kind of support.
Now, I guess musically, I guess the question I have for you is that you communicate so clearly through your guitar on record, as well as you do here through the voice in the studio.
Yes, good.
How did you get to that point in your playing, and has the guitar been the primary mode of expression for you in your life?
Not exactly, but in a way it has. If we consider that emotional expression is, in my case, what the guitar was able to serve, releasing, then yes, always, and as an extension of my voice, always. But before that, there was the drum connection. From infancy, a connection with drum and rhythm, and because of rhythm, it's time. So because of time, it's also space and how one adapts to space through time. So naturally, these kinds of concepts are very important, since music is a certain kind of system that utilizes notes relative to time with values, and how they are positioned is always relative to one another in some kind of spatial context. So time plays an important part of music, just as space does. So that is not so much anything real outside of us, but is an extension of our actual event of life. So we are time-space beings that would naturally and inevitably invent music if we were going to, at some point or other, if we were going to express ourselves and express our need to sing, right, and feel good, and so on and so forth, and question, and be a very intelligent part of the universe as a whole. And so, getting back to my point, what enabled me to attain this understanding primarily, and most importantly, were out-of-body experiences, which meant that I was able to, for some reason or other, or just because of timing perhaps, or my life karma or family karma, I was able to leave the reference we call the body-mind. That happened early enough in my life, so it was a kind of a natural process. And then at 5 years of age, when I had a tragic accident, which happens to many people, you can be forced out of the body, and then you experience other components of your own being, your own body-mind. So we can call them harmonics. Like in music, you have a note, and then you have a harmonic of that note. So here we have harmonic components within each one of us that could be called part of our spiritual endowment, which for the most part, if you're living an easy and comfortable life, there's not enough pressure or heat applied to you in order to activate these particular kinds of bodies or levels of consciousness. And so they remain dormant until the pressure is put upon you, until you practice something, or you have a car accident, which is also a way that a lot of people experience accessing higher powers or psychic powers and so on. So here we're talking about a shock. So shock is very good in this case, where it opens the person up. Combat shocks also serve this purpose. So we're talking about spiritual experiences at the earliest part of my life that also related to the drumming and trance music, helped to give me a very definite spiritual bias to everything I do in the field of music, including playing the guitar.
Now, playing music, I hear you saying, is no different from the rest of life. It's got time and space, and we operate in very much the same way.
Yes, it reflects what is inside the human beings, particularly musicians who are given the mission of expressing in musical form because of their sensitivity to sound and hearing and musical phenomena for the most part. So they're responsible for making that available to people and being true to it. And that's another important part of the way that I play. I'm really true to my inner reality. It's so true that I don't let too much of the outer reality dictate what that is that the inner reality has to do with the world. And I work from the inside out rather than from the outside in. So I don't generally listen to music, never listen to the radio. So I'm kind of like dropped out of the situation, more a recluse type, but still in tune and in touch, because regardless of whether I'm listening to a radio or listening to CDs of other people's music, they're still in the air. They're still accessible from the inside, say the infinite inside. That's why people are taught meditation, so that they can know more and learn more about not only themselves, but their own capacity to receive more of the universe in general. See, so there are different ways of hearing.
Now, you have a number of students, including musicians you're going to be playing with tomorrow night, and the musicians we hear on here.
Yes.
Do you teach a way of playing music so that one can access that inner truth?
Yes, then it's not just playing music. It's more a way of living life. If you live life, then you're able to bring that kind of sensitivity to all your relationships, to your family, to everything you have to do, including playing music or including art. Because everyone, well, let's put it this way, the universe is an art form. And it's already in total communication with itself. And when we are able to communicate totally and fully as the universe, then I think we have fulfilled the purpose of being in this universe. Period. It's the purpose. Being in the universe is to experience its total communication. And so that's why, in my case, regarding the simple music that I play, which is often called avant-garde or some kind of crazy wisdom music or something like that, the idea is to have this discipline of freedom. And by freedom now, I mean particularly allow yourself to be in rapport with the entire event, the cosmic event. And that's the discipline, that's the condition, which has nothing to do with you playing music, except that if that's what you do, then that's what you do when you're in rapport. If you're doing something else, you bring whatever this event brings you to whatever it is that you're doing. So music is one of the beautiful things that you can do from this point of view. But any form of art or any kind of work, because it's a lifestyle, it's a life process, is benefited by this, so that you operate more peacefully, more gently, more calmly, that is more in the spirit of things, and then become more capable of your own true nature as silence. And so I share that. I have discovered that what the divine is something that is transcendent. So transcendent, there are no words for it. So beyond words that we have to say it is simply and only silence. Ultimately, silence. Or ultimate boredom for some people who are not into this kind of thing.
Boredom has virtue in itself, I think.
Absolutely, yes.
Now you say music is one of the beautiful things, and those of us who are here playing this music, and certainly those of you who are out there listening to it by choice, know this. But it seems like music also these days, there's plenty of chains involved in what happens between the inside coming outwards and that getting into the ears of other people.
Yes, that's because the whole life principle. And it depends on what one dedicates themselves to. So here we're talking about a certain kind of duality or schism, the inner person and then the so-called outer world, the person and then the world. And so the two reference points have to be reconciled. So there must be something ongoingly, and this is what religion, I think, and maybe philosophy and certain schools of thought, psychology, tries to reconcile. This schism, this schizophrenia, this separativeness, this self-division or self-conflict. So I think that then we have to stop and realize at once and altogether our already existing connection with the cosmos as a whole, and get into the feeling of the cosmos as a whole, or in certain schools of thought, your godness, your absolute okayness in terms of being and just being, the being of being, or some say the supreme being, say the being of being. Get into the being of being and feel the emptiness and the beautiful grace that's in that. if you can, where there's nothing in there, see? But that nothing that's in there is the everything of the divine itself. See? It's the spirit. See? It's the spirit. See? It's transcendence. And it's very, very natural. It's natural because every night we go to sleep into it, and every day we appear as egos on top of it, a layer on top of it. So even now we have access to what is always sleeping. See? Or seemingly always asleep, or always at rest. That means our true nature is silence. And that's what we have to kind of get back to while we do the things in the world. But that's up to the individual. I don't say everyone has to do that, because I might be doing it and my friends may be doing it. But I think that's something which we find automatically and we seek for quite naturally. We go to it whenever we want to get away from the hustle and bustle. We want a quiet place to feel ourselves, right? Think. And that's doing it spontaneously. We go away to the nature, to the seashore and places like that, where you really feel your oneness, your at onceness with everything, right? So what I'm saying is remembering that and making that more of a priority than forgetting it, and making suffering more of a priority. And deal with the suffering from that, rather than from the suffering try to regain that.
Now it's been your choice to bring this nothingness into the world in the form of this music, in the form of your words.
Yes, I think.
I'm curious what strategies you've used to cut through the hustle and bustle.
Well, the point is this: where I am right now, there is no hustle and bustle. And that's a very important paradox to keep in mind. There is none. In fact, there never has been any hustle and bustle. But yet the way we are configured, the way we are wired, and we have agreed to be wired, there is nothing but hustle and bustle.
We should hear more music. There's a lot being said here, and I think to properly chew on all of this, we should hear what's going on. Again, Tisziji Muñoz is playing tomorrow night at the Regent Theater in Arlington with Bob Moses and John Lockwood. And can you prepare us for that show? What should we expect?
I think a trio configuration, to begin with, a trio configuration. And I will do what I usually do, which is to play some melodies created on the spot. Certainly, in my case, they're usually in prayer form, so they always have a certain sweetness, but they don't simply end as sweetness. But since I'm into this understanding of allness and oneness in a manner of metaphysical terminology, so I use that as a key and see where it goes. And considering my vast experience as a human spirit and as a musician on occasion, then giving it the freedom to roam is very interesting. And I pass that kind of spirit opportunity around to the band, and it comes back in the same instance. And so it becomes simultaneous combustion, see? And simultaneous creativity, and always a joyous and celebrational event, even marvelous in a manner of speaking. Marvelous event. And so sure, it'll take on forms, but then forms, which is what I think a lot of people are too caught up in, because they don't know what forms are. Forms are mind forms. That means they're traps. So we have to be careful what traps we want to be exposed to, and what traps or chains we want put around our neck to think about. And so here I use minimal chainage, so to speak, to release people from the chain gang mentality, and keeping them stuck in a certain way. And it's this minimal melody and maximal kind of like openness, maximal opportunity to feel your state of oneness. Okay?
Great.
With all due respect to structure and the sacredness of it, certainly, but minimally applied in this case, so that there's much more ascension rather than descension or depression.
Let's hear a little more music from Divine Radiance. Do you have a suggestion for us? Should we play the rest of that track? Or
We can go to Initiation by Fire. I think that's a good...
Great. Great.
Next piece, yes.
Let's hear Initiation by Fire from Divine Radiance.
Thank you very much.
Now the last piece you said.
We will go to the last piece.
All right, we'll play.
A little later.
Great. We'll play Initiation by Fire, and this again is from Divine Radiance on Anami Music, your label.
Distributed by Dreyfus. Yes.
And again, tomorrow, a very rare opportunity to hear Tisziji Muñoz in Boston, playing at the Regent Theater in Arlington at 8 p.m. And we have a special deal. Anybody who goes to that show and mentions this show, mentions WHRB, or that you heard Tisziji speaking on the radio, we'll be able to get $5 off the $20 admission price. So you can go for $15. And I guess that is relevant in a way to what's being said, but as what we've learned here is there's a spirit ground for all of this.
Oh, definitely. It's our spirit. It's everyone's spirit. You know what I mean? It's the basic spirit. And I think it's really, to put it in more clear context, the basic spirit of goodness. It's really about goodness, universal goodness. I think that's, a good way to say it, because that's how I feel about it.
Initiation by Fire. You're hearing music from Divine Radiance, Tisziji Muñoz, Farrah Saunders, Ravi Coltrane, Rashid Ali, Paul Schaefer, Don Pate, Cecil McBee. You heard parts of Initiation by Fire there. And this is a recording from last year of yours.
From 2001.
Recording made in 2001.
Yes. Released last year.
Of course, having to do with the events of that year.
Yes.
And so it seemed like there was a particular need to make a recording at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you had that since then? What's your recording activity been recently?
I continue to record. So the need is still there. Not necessarily in relationship to catastrophic conditions, perhaps, but I would like to think in the spirit of providing people with certain release of tension so that they escape their own or transcend their own catastrophic conditions. So I offer my music as some kind of psychic release of tension and stress so that people do not, in fact, experience catastrophic conditions.
And do you find that people these days are unreceptive to that you're offering them, and that there's a violent reaction against it at all?
Of course, that's part of the wholeness of the situation. There are those who say no, they need to learn their lessons through tragedy. They need to learn their lessons by being blown to smithereens. And of course, I agree, you need your lessons. And you need to learn your lessons. You need to get beyond your lessons. And then there are those who are in between that world and then closer to my world of transcending lessons, karmic, tragically induced or learned lessons. And so those are the ones who generally positively respond to this. It's like saying they know they're hungry, so if they see food, they're going to go for it right on the spot. Yes.
Now, we heard on this recording a duet between yourself and Farrah Saunders.
Yes, a duet of sorts. While we were playing in the so-called maelstrom of the process of playing together, with that much freedom. Yes.
You two found each other in the middle of the meteor storm somehow.
Yes, in the eye of the hurricane. Yes.
And now that's a relationship for you that goes back many years.
Yes, back to 74. Yes.
And now, what was it like to meet a musician like that?
It's good to meet him. It's good. Good to spend time with Farrah. And I think, for the record, the first time he heard me play, he hired me on the spot. And that means he knew exactly what he wanted to hear. He knew what he was looking for. And I was nevertheless not able to go with him at that time. So it took about 3 invitations to join his band before I actually went with him. And it was great playing with Farrah because he's a very intuitive player and actually a very humble person and extremely knowledgeable with very great ears. And at that time needed a certain kind of friendship that I offered him, kind of a spiritual friendship, if we can call it that, or a peaceful friendship, I think is a better way of putting it. And a wisdom friendship, yes. I think that is also very important, a wisdom friendship. So it's very good. Farrah's a great person and a great player.
Now, have you felt that Farrah's music has rubbed off on you at all?
I would say so, to a certain degree. I think what he offered, if we can call playing freely, his need for freedom in music was the same as mine. The pieces that he played many standard pieces, so when I was in his band for many years, played all the pieces, a lot of standards and a lot of Coltrane tunes, and of course his own pieces. I've never resorted to playing those pieces. Okay? Certainly some Coltrane tunes are the pieces that a lot of the people that I meet are more familiar with, and so on occasion I feel that it's appropriate to play a classical piece like that. But certainly his Farrah's generosity and his need for freedom reinforced my own. It's not that I took it on. What I did was I responded to it properly, and learned a lot about him, learned a lot about music, the jazz world, and how to conduct oneself in this kind of context. I was able to study him and study how he used freedom and what his discipline relative to freedom was. And so Yes, it was good to work with him.
Mm.
It's a good school.
And now, as compatriots, it sounded like there was some mutual learning, and you say that you're more familiar with some Coltrane pieces than maybe other parts of the jazz canon. And
Yes, he brought them to me because he was working on them. And the pieces, a lot of jazz standards and Coltrane pieces.
Now, for you in your music, how do you incorporate those sources and say everything back to Bach? You know, how fair game is it?
I think the Coltrane pieces are relevant to my situation. The Bach situation is not as relevant to my situation, although I recognize the music. I recognize the majesty and the intention behind that kind of composition to satisfy requirements relative to majesty and relative to being sponsored and relative to work that he had to do, relative to the church and relative to his own evolution as a certain kind of practicing master of music. But that has to do with his situation. And I would have no more to do with his situation than he would have to do with my situation, because we are freestanding beings and not necessarily in debt to that or anything else, but what we have to do now. And I do think, as I said earlier, that even in regards to music, you don't have to go to school to hear harmonies. If you can listen deeply enough, you'll hear those harmonies because they come from human nature to begin with. People think, well, I put these chords together. Yes, you are able to put those chords together from the same place that anyone else puts those chords together from. Not out of a vacuum, so to speak, but out of the same cosmic mind. So if you visit the cosmic mind, as some people are able to do, then you hear not only Bach's music, but every source of his own impulses that transformed into that music, as well as the very source of every musician's impulses. And so it's a matter of whether or not a person needs to do that, or they're open to that place within themselves where they can access that, or, on the other hand, scientific inventions and other kinds of creative effects. It's just a matter of getting to that place inside the psyche where it is in touch with the cosmic stream of things. And so you can be Bach, you can be Jesus Christ, you can be anyone in time or space, past, present, or future, if you know how to do it, so to speak, because we're all pieces of the puzzle of the cosmic wholeness, oneness, and just references for it in the time-space world. So it's a matter of employing your understanding of your own awareness to see what it is you need to get. And so here my situation is not having to make those references, as delicious, delightful, majestic, or fantastic and gorgeous as some of those classical pieces are, but have my own feelings find their own forms of those kinds of structures that pertain more to my own peculiar embodiment, and bring the majesty of my situation into musical expression as much as possible. So it may be like, but definitely different from, let's say, the work of Bach, and much more relevant to, let's say, this past century, past 50 years, past 30 years, past 20 years. And I think that when we enter what I call Heartfire Sound, which is a very important label I have created to describe what I do, then all bets are off. All time and space is off the map. All concepts, all self, all thought, all mind are gone. They erase from the field. So you actually enter this vortex of pure fire, which is like spiritual light. And that is our nature. Our true nature is that. And people don't believe it because they are absolutely so preoccupied and solidly identified with phenomena that they don't believe that the phenomena comes from the same place. So they're more identified with effects than with the original cause of all of this.
Right. The difference between Bach sitting at an organ and improvising a 6-part fugue, and me sitting at an organ and not having any idea to do that.
But you could have a need to do it in your own way, you see? And the idea, of course, is, as I said originally, if there's enough heat applied, enough pressure applied, then you break open. When you break open, then it's all there for you. You just have to know how to break open. If you can't open yourself, then you have to be shocked into openness. You see? I'm not saying getting hit over head with a Louisville slugger, but, you have to have some pressure upon you, or you have to create pressure within you, which then becomes like the responsibility of a genius. You have to create pressure and make sure the pressure's on you to keep busting down and breaking through layers and barriers that oppress or inhibit the soul's true realization of its infinitude. So you keep practicing. I'm telling you.
I get my organ together.
Yes. Play anything and then tie it together. Play anything when you hit the organ and tie it together. Play any two notes separately and imagine how they're joined together. Seems obvious.
It seems
yes,
infinite.
Absolutely. See? And thus you have how creation actually occurs spontaneously, without reason. So it's an unreasonable process. True creativity is unreasonable. Profound. Please.
So many tracks we could go on with this. So much to learn. Again, we want to mention that Tisziji Muñoz is playing tomorrow night at the Regent Theater in Arlington with Bob Moses and John Lockwood, and that's a...
I don't know if I am playing tomorrow night. I think I'm being played tomorrow night.
There will be
which is just as good, by the way.
It might even be better.
Thank you.
More worth your $15, which is the special price for WHRB listeners. Just mention that you heard him on this show. And we should play more music from Divine Radiance, a release by Tisziji Muñoz. And just a simple question.
Yes.
What has been the origin and history of your label, Anami Music?
Anami Music, that's a Sanskrit word which means without description. So it's actually the best way to describe what I do. It's without a particular description, without a particular genre, without a particular idiom in particular. And so basically these are forms that would appear to be like a jazz form, a jazz ballad, or like an avant-garde piece, or like a classical piece, or like a folk piece, or like a Latin piece, but they're not really. They're facsimiles of those things, which is, I think, Spirit's way of saying that's the way it should be. Facsimiles. No one is that, so why pretend to be that, whether you're one culture or other, We are no culture, I think. As spirits, we're only culture while we are married to the flesh, but in spirit, we belong to the universe, and that includes how many cultures, my friends, huh? How many planets, how many worlds, how many dimensions, how many minds is the one mind, right?
All of these dimensions will be welcome tomorrow night at the Regent Theater in Arlington. Here we go. This is Divine Radiance from Divine Radiance.
Yes, the last piece. I'm going crazy here, man.
10 minutes past 1, and you're listening to 95.3 WHRB Cambridge. Welcome to the afternoon concert.